Training camp is in full swing. Beat reporters are dropping tons of nuggets of players that are rising and performing extremely well in training camp so far. I'm here today with Chuck Bass to sift through some of that and talk about the players that's hype we are fading currently on Player Profiler. All right, Chuck. So it's Wednesday, the 7th of August. We are heading towards the heart of draft season. We have the first week of the preseason starting this week. We actually have games going on tonight, but by the time this drops, Anthony Richardson will have played his first preseason game along with Daniel Jones, who's going to be a player that we're talking about this week. So let's just jump right into it. Anthony Richardson is quarterback 26 at the moment. And, right now, the recent reports are that Richardson struggled a little bit to start camp. So did Jones, but Richardson stacked a few really, really nice days. And reports said that he's pretty much had the best stretch of days since his rookie season. I'm pulling a quote here from a Colts beat reporter and said he's in the middle of the two best practice stretch he's had since his rookie season, following up a 6-for-6 performance with a 9 of 14 day that pulled his completion percentage to a stretch to 75%. I'm not overly concerned or overly excited about, those kinds of things. I'm more curious about his pocket presence. Can he stay healthy, and what this offense looks like? But Anthony Richardson, quarterback 26, are you buying his hype right now that he's going to be a new player practically this year?
I mean, he was the quarterback 6 in drafts last year, and he's plummeted almost 20 spots. And I actually think that's pretty wild. He's owned up to his misgivings last year, right? He literally said in a quote this year, I didn't do enough. That was a big thing for me. I've got to lock in. Like, okay, you should probably already know that when you get drafted. So that's not amazing, but it's not a bad quote, right? So has there ever been more anticipation than his first throw tonight? Like, I cannot wait to see. I want to see like a 3-yard slant. That's all I want. Just easy layups. The best thing for him really that we can all fall back on is that Daniel Jones is having one of the all-time worst quarterback camps. Every single mention about him is he's got no pocket presence, no zip on his ball. His movement has been terrible. So for fantasy wise, it's just the Justin Fields rule, right? Like, I don't care much about Anthony Richardson's passing. If he's healthy, he's a lock to finish as a quarterback 1 in any given week. The team situation is very akin to the Giants with Brian Daboll. If the Colts don't show this year that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, they're all going to be updating their LinkedIn profiles. And Daniel Jones is a black hole. He's not the light at the end of the tunnel. So they're trying to right the wrongs from last year. They've owned up to, their mistreatment of him, some situations they've put him in that have not been, entirely successful to boost his chances of succeeding. But you just look at how he performed last year. 10 games, 3rd in rush yards per game for quarterbacks, 3rd in rushing touchdowns overall, tied with Bryce Young, by the way. I just think this is a guy that's like, okay, why did we picture him as the quarterback 6 last year? Why is he the quarterback 27 last year? What's changed? And not a whole lot other than adding Tyler Warren.
Richardson is intriguing. Richardson's very similar to Justin Fields in that if he's on the field and he's healthy, very high probability he's going to finish as a quarterback 1 in many of those weeks. The thing with Richardson, right, he has had issues staying healthy. His completion percentage, extremely bad, 47.7% completion percentage in year 2 last year, where he played a majority of his games, right, 11, which is the most of his 2-year career. Now, he did go see a specialist, the Josh Allen quarterback guru, and so maybe he helped tweak his mechanics, and maybe he helped refine his game. I do think it's interesting you talk about the whole, Richardson feels like maybe he's taking it a little bit more serious right now. Honestly, I don't love that. If it takes until year 3 for you to get a reality check as a first round pick, that you have to get it in gear, especially at a position where you're the face of the franchise. That's a little worrisome, but look, I'm all for giving guys second chances. I don't want to see anybody fail. But ultimately for me, I'm not really in there where I'm super excited about drafting Richardson. I get it. He's quarterback 26. Traditionally, I do not draft two quarterbacks in many, many leagues, unless they're talking about maybe a 14-man league and,
Yeah.
the waiver wire is going to be extremely thin. Then maybe those are situations where, I'll take a second quarterback. But players like, Cedric Tillman, who I've been extremely, extremely high on. Cedric Tillman goes one spot ahead of Anthony Richardson right now in ADP. You have guys like Rico Dowdle, who could be an interesting guy that's going to be in the mix in Carolina, who could be
Mhm.
a solid depth piece. Brenton Strange at the tight end position. I like Brenton Strange this year. I think he can definitely be a top 12 tight end. And
Yeah.
you also have a guy like Geno Smith, who actually goes behind Anthony Richardson in ADP right now. And you also have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are actually my number 2 ranked DST this year, who I don't generally typically draft DSTs, but you're also, if you're going to take a DST, and that's pretty much at the back end of your draft, like that's a position
Yeah.
or that's a team, I guess technically a team because it's a defense, not a player. That's
Mhm.
someone that I would be taking a look at. So
Yeah.
overall, I know it's a very cheap flyer to take, Chuck, but it's just something I'd rather somebody else take that chance, especially due to the injury concerns possibly as well. And there's a capable backup behind him in Daniel Jones. We're assuming Richardson is the starter week 1.
So the only pushback I'll give there is that I don't think Daniel Jones is capable. I think that he is a shell of what the flashes he showed in 2018, 2019, 2020. But, if this is the team that feels like they're in the hot seat, the ability, he's the highest paid backup in the league. His cap hit is actually higher than several starting quarterbacks this year. So the team has said that they think he might be capable. So that's different than my opinion. But I will say, just in regards to Anthony Richardson, I think he's just one of the only draft picks on the board this year, especially considering how late he's going, where this could be a fundamental piece of your lineup any given week, as opposed to I think Tillman could be a nice flex play. I think Dowdle could be a nice flex play. I think those guys will have, maybe quarterly value or even half season value for all I know. But this is the guy where it's just like, okay, he's, Tua's going 8 quarterbacks ahead of him. Tua led the league in passing in 2023, finishes the QB9, and he was QB 14 in points per game. Like, these guys that don't rush, they're just not the factors that these guys that are in against any given defense, no matter who the injuries are to their wide receiver core, tight end core, whatever have you. You just know that this dude is he's got one card to play, and I think he's going to play it as much as he can while he's healthy.
So before I close out my argument, you are buying the hype. You're not fading
Yeah.
it like I am.
Yeah. Quarterback 27, he's going around, you mentioned some guys, but Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, like guys that are, when they're playing at the top of their game, they still don't hit the floor that this guy has when he's playing. Think about how poor a taste we have in our mouth from Anthony Richardson last year. He ended the season in quarterback 4, quarterback 9, quarterback 15, quarterback 14. That's his floor. So I'm buying.
Yeah, and I guess I'm selling the hype only just sheerly off the fact that I'm not buying into, him being fixed, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I would say is, I also think if he looks good in preseason for week 1, I mean, the first week of preseason, I don't think this quarterback 25 price tag is going to hold up, right? If
Yeah.
people start to gain confidence in him, like I could see him shooting up 5, 6, maybe even 7 spots at the quarterback position. And what I would say is I also expect this is a coaching staff that's on the hot seat, right?
Yeah.
I expect them to have a quick hook with Anthony Richardson, and that's something to keep in mind, as well. What I would say is I am totally okay taking a chance at Richardson
Yeah.
at his current cost, only off the fact that you have to be comfortable cutting him. And that's also
Mhm.
if you have deeper benches, because I don't generally roster 2 quarterbacks. But if you're telling me you have like a 7, 8-man bench, I'm okay taking a chance on Richardson. But you have to be comfortable to have a quick, be able to be quick to cut him, because there's always guys in the first few weeks of the season that end up being guys that you want to pick up because they have maybe a good week 1 or week
Yeah.
2, but you're so married to guys that you're holding out hope for that you don't end up making that move.
Yeah.
And that would be my concern with getting a guy like Richardson.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. Did you
You
have
you
anything
made a
else you
good
want to add?
you made a really good point too, is that I also typically don't roster 2 quarterbacks in a 1 QB league, but this is probably one of a handful of guys that I would
Sure.
just for his upside.
Yeah. And just taking a look before we close out on Richardson, his first game of the season is against the Dolphins. Secondary wise, that's not a great secondary. They have a ton of injuries, so he could start off strong. Their front seven is much, much better than their
Mhm.
back end. Then he plays Denver week
Oof.
2, which
Oof.
could be a tough one. Then
Mhm.
he goes and plays the Titans, who their defense is a little stingy, but they're not that
Mhm.
talented. And then he goes against the Rams, who have a good defense. So that's a pretty interesting litmus test there for the first
Yeah.
4 weeks. He's going to play 2 really good defenses in Denver and the Rams, and then 2, middle of the pack to below average
Yeah.
at best in Dolphins and the Titans.
Mhm. And that's actually who the last 2 teams he played last year were Denver and Tennessee, and he was quarterback 15 and quarterback 14. We'll see. Both
Yeah.
improved units though.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to our next player. It's going to be Jayden Blue, running back for the Dallas Cowboys. And Jayden Blue was a player that we talked about this quarterback room on our 4th of July show, or this running back room. And Jayden Blue was one that me and you both kind of were like, I don't really want any parts of this room, so I'm not even going to waste a spot, but I wouldn't
Mhm.
do it on Blue. I've changed my tune a little bit. I don't know where you fall with him, but right now he's going off the board at 137. He's RB 45. He got some time with the ones due to Miles Sanders being out. I'm selling that hype that he's running with the ones because, quite honestly, he's running with the ones because they're not a lot of, they need bodies there to begin with. And Sanders missed a couple days of practice, right? Now,
Mhm.
there was also a report that came out where, the running backs coach, Derek Foster,
Yep.
firmly dismissed the idea that Blue's work ethic is in question. And he also was especially impressed with his ability to run between the tackles and what he's seen in camp so far.
Mhm.
Talk to me about Jayden Blue, Chuck, because I have a feeling you're fading him, and I don't want to, show your cards completely. Tell the viewers what you're feeling. What's the temperature check on Jayden Blue for you?
Yeah, right before this show started, I actually put out a meme from The Departed saying, like, Dallas wants Jaden, Dallas needs Jayden Blue, and Alec Baldwin says, no, you want Jayden Blue, because that's how I feel about a lot of this. I feel like this is the fantasy community is wish casting Jayden Blue, to be the RB1 here because the Denver fog years are still hanging over the Javonte Williams stuff, and I get that. We're all emotional people. We've all lost money here or there. So I should say also, I should preface this by going with I'm fading the storyline more than I am fading the actual player, right? Like, I don't believe he's going to be the RB1 or he's going to be a meaningful RB1 in Dallas, but I would buy that he ends up being the RB1 there at some point in the season. I'm just not sure if it's a unit I really want to buy in on, especially him and his skill set, maybe best ball, maybe DFS plays. His receiving upside does make him, a fun player. His comp for him has been Darren Sproles, and that was pre-draft and also directly from Brian Schottenheimer lately. So take for that what you will. Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated saying that Javonte Williams looks like the guy in camp. Patrick Walker from CBS Sports with the same energy. So, like I said, industry-wide, everybody's wants the RB1 in Dallas because traditionally it's been a pretty good player. Last year, Rico Dowdle, outstanding year, had a very nice season for an undrafted free agent. But it wasn't until Dak went down in week 9 that it really started happening. Prior to then, he was the RB 36, and then they retool the offense around the run game, Cooper Rush, all that jazz. And we all know the season he ended up having. So I guess I just wonder, like, we all think this is going to be a passing bonanza. Dak might throw for 5,000 yards. They bring in Pickens. They extend Jake Ferguson. They bring in an elite pass blocking guard or pass blocking lineman. I don't know I don't even know if I want the guy that's going to eat in the run game here because I just don't know how valuable it's going to end up being, along with not even specifically knowing who it is.
Yeah, I get it. We talked about Javonte being the guy to
Mhm.
own just because of the sheer ability to pass block and
Mhm.
he's got good hands, right? He might not have that
Yep.
burst, but he's got good hands. And for an offense that I think this team's going to be playing from behind a ton. They're going to need,
Mhm.
to have a reliable guy in pass pro. I think early down stuff, I would expect maybe Miles Sanders to be that guy and mix in more with Jayden Blue. And I think Javonte is going to get a lot of that receiving work.
Yep.
I would say I like Jayden Blue. I wouldn't fault anybody for taking picks. I think it's a good process to take, young rookie running backs towards the end of your drafts because we've seen so much success. So I would say I'm not fading him where I'm not drafting him, but I'm fading the hype that he's running with the ones and that he looks like he has a chance to take this job and be the starter week one. I'm not buying that. I would also say I'd rather a guy like Tank Bigsby, who goes one spot ahead of Jayden Blue, who looks like he might be the early down starter. And obviously that's another room that's going to be rotated with a lot of different players. But you
Yeah.
have a guy like Tank Bigsby who goes right before him. And honestly, Tajay Spears is the 3 running backs ahead and 10 picks, 10 picks
Mm.
ahead of Jayden Blue as well. And
Yeah.
I honestly think I'd prefer Tajay Spears in that offense, which
Yeah.
to me is more of a 2-headed monster than a 3-headed. I don't even know
Mhm.
what you would call it. Disaster.
Yeah,
Is that the best way to
yeah,
put it?
I don't know. It's like a throuple or something that you don't want to be a part of.
Rough.
And I'm with you. Like he's just, I just don't think he's going to be the rusher that is going to kind of run away from this role from the other guys. They were even mixing in Deuce Vaughn last year along with Zeke early on. And, that was because they had options in the passing game. And when that was taken away, they focused on one dude. Well, now they're back to having options in the passing game. So it's just a situation where I'm just not even sure you're terribly interested in whoever the RB1 is going to be, unless there's an injury, unless, the run blocking is better this year. Dallas was not a terrific run blocking unit last year. There's a lot of reasons to be skeptical. And like you mentioned, his draft range, there's a lot of guys that could really be something on offenses that I know are going to run the piss out of the ball.
Yeah, there's not a ton left to say about this, but it seems like we're both kind of fading Jayden Blue. At least the hype. I might have some shares here and there.
Yeah.
Especially if I don't really, if I have a good running back room and I don't need if I'm sitting here and saying, man, my RB3 or my RB4 is I need somebody stable. I maybe went RB anchor and, I need somebody who's going to give me a good floor until maybe some other guys get a more
Yeah.
carved out role. Then I'd probably prefer to go like a Tank Bigsby. But if you're sitting here saying you have a really good running back room, then yeah, Jayden Blue might be the guy to take a shot on because you might sit here and say his upside is higher, but the chance of him not being much of anything this year is also extremely high as well compared to guys
Yeah.
like Bigsby or Tajay Spears.
Sure. And I mean, there were several running back rooms last year where you didn't even want the RB1. You didn't want it on the Chiefs last year. You didn't want it on the Commanders last year. You didn't really want it on the Bears last year. And there's several other
Didn't want it
examples.
on Denver.
Didn't want it on Denver last year. There's just a lot of painful. So remember that as you guys are going into that. And we're talking season long, right? I'm sure there's going to be a month here where he's maybe a top 20 RB in 2 of the 4 weeks, or hell, maybe even 3 in a row. But we're just looking season long, weeks 14 through 17, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next guy here. It's going to be James Cook. And we're talking about James Cook's contract scares and the hyping up of Ray Davis. Ray Davis, rookie, drafted out last year, scored 6 total touchdowns last year. James Cook also scored 18 total touchdowns, finishes RB 11 in points per game at 16.7. Currently a camp hold in. Initially looked like he was going to be a holdout. Then it looked like he was going to be a hold in. Then he practiced. Then I guess he thought that in good faith that would help him out in contract situations, Chuck. But then I guess things did not percolate the way he had hoped for it. And so now he's back on the sidelines holding in once again. Guys like Ty Johnson and Ray Davis are getting valuable reps, even though James Cook knows this offense. Talk to me about the James Cook situation. How are you viewing this right now? And are you buying stock in either one of, or out of any of the 3 running backs in this room?
I mean, Ray Davis, if I'm not mistaken, I'm fading. Ray Davis is one of the 5 biggest risers in the last month here. And it's really just purely because of this story. Sure. So I'll focus on the James Cook part first, because then I can get to the Ray Davis stuff. I think this is where it's important for us to not have NFL Alzheimer's. Every year, a player from a critical offense wants a new contract and there's a hold in. They stir up some stuff in the media, or the media stirs it up because, James Cook hasn't been giving a ton of quotes. He's, we saw the business. Like, that is cookie cutter standard stuff that we see every year. He's vital to this offense too. He's going to get a new deal and he'll probably get it before week 1. They aren't paying anybody else. Josh Allen has a $36 million cap hit, which is the 10th amongst quarterbacks, which is wild. He's behind Cousins, Geno, Tua, and just ahead of Deshaun Watson. Here are the next 5 guys the Bills are paying: in order. Deion Dawkins, 19 million. Dawson Knox, 14 million. Matt Milano, 12 million. Ed Oliver, 11 million. They can afford to pay him. And I think they have to, because Ray Davis is a fine player. He looked good in small doses, but he also looked bad in small doses. Not to mention the Bills' offensive line was the healthiest unit amongst all units on either side of the ball last year. So where Ray Davis may make his bread is as the backup kicker. He took a few snaps last year. He's been messing around in preseason as well. And I just say all that to say he doesn't have the same game-breaking ability that James Cook has. He can move the chains, which is helpful in a Joe Brady offense. But they shifted towards a run-heavy scheme because they have two guys that are great at it with Josh Allen and James Cook. And this is a team that is smack dab in the middle of their Super Bowl window that is lacking a serious threat at wide receiver or tight end, with Khalil Shakir hurt. I just think that this is a guy that they can't mess around with, and I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern about this room is, regardless of the contract situation, James Cook's usage and snap share was 58%, which was 25th in the NFL. I've been fading James Cook even before the hold in, hold out. That doesn't really change my thoughts on James Cook. I was fading him just in general way before this. I just look at it.
Yeah.
This is a guy who over 50% of his fantasy points came from from touchdowns. Ty Johnson limits some of the pass catching work because his own quarterback said that Ty Johnson's like the best third down back in the NFL. So there's a lot of confidence there. And there, when you're an elite quarterback, you get a little bit of pull here. And if Josh Allen wants Ty Johnson on the field on third downs, it doesn't matter what Joe Brady or this coaching staff wants. Ty Johnson's going to be out there, and it's going to be a headache, right? And I think you're hoping for that, those touchdowns with James Cook, and I don't see him repeating 18 total touchdowns. Ray Davis going to year 2, he's looked really good so far. I totally get that he's shooting up in cost right now, Chuck. He's RB 52 though. He's pick 169 right now in terms of sleeper ADP. And he's risen a decent amount. RT Sports has him at an ADP of 127. Sleeper has him at 167. NFL.com has him at 217. ESPN has him at 221. Right. I think Best Ball is usually a better gauge right now for how sharp movement's going, but at the same time, keeping in mind, you also, especially in underdog ADP, that's also 3 wide receivers that you have to start. And so wide receivers get pushed up, running backs usually get pushed down. So it fluctuates, but yeah, he's definitely been a riser. And I just think, overall, I like Ray Davis. I think he's a good handcuff. I think he's going to be the guy that gets that early down work if Cook were to miss time due to injury or this contract situation. I think Ray Davis could be a good handcuff, but I also would sit here and say that he's not a premium handcuff for me. Guys that I would be taking as the backup running backs, unless James Cook is not there week 1, right? Then it would be different. Because you're going to get really strong value there from where you drafted Ray Davis. But guys like, DJ Giddens, who are behind Jonathan Taylor, who get a monster workload and they're like number 1 in opportunity share. Like, I try to handcuff premium spots like that. Whereas a guy like Ray Davis, who I've always been a fan of Ray Davis, he's not somebody that I'm reaching up to go get. If he slides and he's one of my later picks, I'd be okay to take him. But yeah, if he's shooting up in drafts right now, I'm not going to buy into that cost rising. I think his cost where it was before all this was more palatable than paying a little bit more of a premium at the moment.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's going to be value to be had, but his rise indicates that people think that he might be able to step in and produce like James Cook, and buddy, that ain't happening. So I think we're in lockstep here about what maybe the range of outcomes are for him and for this offense overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like Ray Davis as a guy to look at in Dynasty. And if you're somebody that is playing in Dynasty formats, we do have a lot of awesome tools here at Player Profiler. So before we jump on to our next player, let's hear a word from the Podfather.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of 2 players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go.
Awesome, Chuck. And let's just keep it moving here. Next player I want to talk about is Rahmondre Stevenson, running back for the New England Patriots. Reports so far in joint practices, Rahmondre Stevenson is mainly handling or getting, 66% of the first team reps, with Trevion Henderson, who is getting more, getting some first team reps, but then also filtering with some of the second team. I look at Rahmondre Stevenson right now, Chuck, and he's a pretty affordable cost. And people are, hyping up the fact that, look, maybe pump the brakes on a young rookie like Trevion Henderson, because Rahmondre Stevenson just got that contract extension. It's 4 years, and he's not going anywhere specifically. And Rahmondre Stevenson, pick 106 off the board, RB 36. Are you buying into this for Rahmondre Stevenson? That he's going to be mainly maybe the early down back, and this is going to be a split, and maybe Henderson's even going drafted a little bit too high, or are you kind of fading it as maybe it's just a nod to the veteran so far, and he's just getting that early work in camp in these joint practices?
This is a tricky one because I think Rahmondre is a talented player, but I think that as far as we opened the show with Anthony Richardson and the hook, the yank that could be coming for him if there's some screw ups. Well, this is the primo pick for that same thing to be happening at his position. When you have a guy like Henderson and as talented and game breaking as he is, breathing down your neck, the second that first fumble is lost, good night, in my opinion, at least. I think they want to use both of them. And so hopefully he steps up and he fixes some of the errors in his game. The blocking will be better. Scheme will be better. He'll probably look better. But as far as, just waiting for the torch to be passed, I think it's coming sooner rather than later. Mike Vrabel said he's going to be a large part of what we do. And this is where our boy Coach Speak Index come into play. Vrabel has a 40% reliability on depth chart Coach Speak. And that's not great. So you invest in a player like Richardson, you pair him with somebody or with Henderson, you pair him with somebody like Drake May. They're trying to get out of this rut that they've been in. And this is, Rahmondre Stevenson is not going to be the guy to do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here, Chuck. Rahmondre Stevenson, I actually think his cost is still way too high. Pick 106, RB 36. You're passing up on guys like Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland at those price at that cost. You can get a guy like Jordan Mason, who I think is going to be more valuable than Rahmondre Stevenson this year, and has a chance to maybe even take over that role. Zach Charbonnet goes about 20 spots past him as well. You can get a Mika Egbuka in drafts past Rahmondre Stevenson in some formats. So I'm not really buying into it either. I think, when push comes to shove and they're on the field, Trevion Henderson is a better pass blocker than Stevenson. I'm not going to sit here and say Stevenson's not great, but Henderson was arguably the best pass blocker in this class. He's doing very, very well in camp, in pass pro. Mike Vrabel is not going to put up with the fumbling like we talked about. Stevenson's already had some issues fumbling in camp so far, and I just think he's kind of lost that juice, right? He just did not look that great last year. If you look at some of Stevenson's stats in 2025, 27th in fantasy points per game, 48th in fantasy points per opportunity, 24th in expected fantasy points per game. EPA wise, he was ranked 140. He fumbled 7 times, which is the most in the NFL last year for running backs. Lacks explosiveness, where he was 27th in the NFL in explosive runs. Evaded tackles was 19th. Nothing in his metrics from last year screams this is a guy that's going to bounce back. Maybe it was a bad year. It wasn't like he was dealing with some sort of injury. Now I get it. Granted, this offense was a mess last year, and they've done some things to fix that. And I think the run blocking will be better than the pass blocking, and will take a little bit of a step forward. But you also couple that with they spent high draft capital on a running back in Trevion Henderson. Josh McDaniels is in town. When we look at the running back targets each year for the top running backs in McDaniels' offense, I'm going to go through this list. I found it earlier today on Twitter, right? Josh Jacobs in McDaniels' offense, 54 targets. Josh Jacobs in 2023 was 54. 2022 was 64. 2021, 49. 2020, 62 to James White. 2019, 95 to James White. 2018, 123 targets to James White in 2018. 2017, 72 for James White. These are all James White. 86, 54. Then Shane Vereen had 77, then 69 for Shane Vereen. Like, this is a running back room that, like, this is an offense in with Josh McDaniels that likes to feature the running back in the pass game. And so I don't expect that to change. Trevon Henderson profiles extremely well for that. And I think maybe Stevenson starts off in more of a 50-50 split, but I think Henderson's going to take this job pretty comfortably once that offense is maybe lacking explosiveness or just needs some juice, or Stevenson fumbles, which I think we can probably expect to happen pretty early this season.
Yeah, I think that you're probably going to have an opportunity early on where Stevenson will be given an opportunity to be a part of this offense, and you'll probably get some nice weeks from him. But if you don't like the price tag, you can probably fade him and pick him up at some point in the season when that switch does occur. And it's just not going to be he's not going to be the most fun running back to watch in comparison to some of the other players they have on that team. But like you said, where he's going, it's just really hard to square up the ceiling that some of the other guys have versus a guy that really, I'm not going to say he's going to be irrelevant, because I don't think that they're going to give anybody the lion's share of anything there. But there's just so much more opportunity with the guys that are going just ahead of him and just behind him.
Sure. Let's move to our last player here. It's going to be Jayden Reed, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, who was rumored to be being featured in more 2 wide receiver sets, Chuck. And I think, Jayden Reed, we talked about this. Right now, he's wide receiver 46. He's going off the board at 104. But Jayden Reed is extremely elite and efficient with his opportunities, right? He was number 1 in fantasy points per target last year with 2.5, right? The problem is he going to get enough volume, right? We talked about it before the show. In my opinion, elite efficiency is not as sticky as volume is. And I don't think we're going to see that kind of volume for Jayden Reed that we're going to need for him to be a guy you're comfortable sticking in your lineup on a week by week basis. And with the addition of Matthew Golden as well, they even spent another high draft pick on another wide receiver as well. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. Romeo Doubs reportedly looks pretty good in camp, and he's a guy that I think people forget about. Christian Watson, reports are saying he's ahead of schedule. He looks like he's going to be back this season at some point. So I'm fading Jayden Reed, at least for the 2 wide receiver sets. I kind of go up and down with him. I don't think I'll have a lot of exposure to him if he falls in drafts, Chuck. Maybe I'll take him and click him a couple times just for the upside, because we know what he can do when he's got the ball in his hands. But he's going to be a maddening player, in my opinion, because he's not going to be out there in 2 wide receiver sets. So I'm fading the hype, and I'm fading the steam that he's going to be out there more.
Yeah, he's in a tricky range, right? He's going near Ibuka, Golden, Godwin, down Shakir. There's just a lot. We've talked about all these guys. There's a lot of ups and downs with a lot of them too. A lot of floor, a lot of ceiling, all that fun stuff. But Jayden Reed, particular, he's like a fantasy psychology test. Like, the only difference between last year and the year before were 3 less touchdowns. That's legitimately it in his fantasy points overall. And his opportunity was diminished for a couple reasons, right? They bring in Josh Jacobs to diversify their run game. And then, of course, Jordan Love gets injured. I think we know who he is, and the plans they had for him last year, they just got derailed, right? First game of the season, in Brazil, he goes nuts. 4 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, and one of them was a 33-yard, end around where he made every player on the number 1 defense in the league last year look like they were trying to catch the greased up deaf guy. Like, he just looked incredible. And then Jordan Love gets injured on the last play of the game on a bad field, and I think this, it just threw the whole season off. You're mixing in Malik Willis. Jordan Love is injured at certain points. It's just a tough one. So you mentioned his efficiency numbers, and they're pretty exciting. You mentioned the fantasy points per target. He was number 1 in QB rating per target, which I think that's a pretty big indicator as well. His dominator rating was high, all the fun stuff. But the main difference really is just ADP. So he's at 75 targets last year. If we can get him up closer to the year before, maybe they're throwing the ball a little bit more with a healthy Jordan Love. Matthew Golden is going to be stretching the defense vertically. That'll allow Reed to stretch it horizontally and just allow him to operate in ways that I think they want to. And you draft Matthew Golden so that I don't have to see Romeo Doubs. I can count. I want to be able to count on one hand, the amount of times I hear Romeo Doubs in a single game. He's not going to be irrelevant, but boy, everybody wants this to be over. I don't care how good he looks. It's just not a factor. I'm not worried about the drops either. You know, you didn't mention those, but it is a big narrative with him. He just, sometimes receivers have drop seasons. He only had 3 the year before. It's not a knock that I think can be consistent year to year. So his ADP, I think, is much, much better. I think if we get even the same performance we got last year, you're probably getting a guy that you can feel pretty good about at cost.
Yeah. Jayden Reed, by the way, when we talk about the 2 wide receiver sets, this was at the Packers family night. And these were the splits so far. Matthew Golden, in the 3 wide receiver sets, Matthew Golden was out there for 27 total snaps. Malik Heath, 22. Romeo Dobbs, 21. McCole Hardman, who I completely forgot was even on this roster, 11. And this is just indicative to me of what we can expect, right? Jayden Reed, 10 snaps in the slot, right? He played 0 snaps out wide. So this is actually just a chart in general of wide to slot. It's not just 2 to 3 wide receiver sets. But I mean, Jayden Reed didn't play a single snap out wide. All of his snaps were in the slot. And I just can't buy into that. Now, I want to buy into Jayden Reed because I know how elite the upside is when he has the ball in his hands. There's a lot of mouths to feed though in this offense, and he's just a guy that's going to be boomer bust for you. And if you have a lot of guys like this, I like to own if there's a lot of starting spots on your roster where you can afford a boomer bust guy. Like maybe, you have like 3 flex spots, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, right? Or 2 flex spots, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Like when you have like an extra roster spot to start somebody, then I don't mind taking a chance on a guy like Jayden Reed because he can give you if he busts, right? You have a lot more players starting that maybe can kind of rise that floor or make up for, the points missed with Reed. So those are the situations, but generally speaking, in a 2 running back, 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, I have trouble with Jayden Reed, and I love Ricky Pearsall, who goes 1 spot ahead of him, and I'm pretty high on Pearsall, so I'm taking Ricky Pearsall 10 times out of 10 over Jayden Reed.
And it's hard for me to argue against that. And like you said, this is not somebody I'd love as my wide receiver too, but I think he'd be an elite flex play. I view him, even though it's not a, apples to apples comparison, I view him like if you're comfortable drafting Jameson Williams, you should be comfortable drafting Jayden Reed. I think they play the same role in the offense. They might, have different snap shares, but as far as their targets per game, their receptions per game, and they're the shot play guys. And that's how I think he's going to be used. He's not going to be effective as the Packers wide receiver 1. That's why you draft Golden. But if you can get me 4 catches for 100 yards or 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown, that's going to be a guy at wide receiver 44 that is going to return more value than the 10 to 15 guys all going ahead of him.
I'm with you. If you are watching and you're still listening to us at this point in time, make sure you like and subscribe. We would really appreciate it. If you did also see me while Chuck was talking, I gave a little bit of a death stare to my wife who decided to hit the flush on the toilet. And I don't know if it came through the mic. I'm hoping it didn't, but that's
big flush day for you.
Yeah, that's showbiz. I had to listen to Chuck piss in the toilet with his mic not muted before
mic check
live, which was good. Good stream, solid stream. But look, we appreciate it. There's only a couple more shows so far for us in this off season. We've got a lot of exciting things going on for me and Chuck in season here for Player Profiler. So continue to stick with us. We've appreciated the sport so much. Enjoy the games this week. Enjoy the off season, and we'll see you guys next week.